there, very good evening to you. This is Primetime Weekend. We're coming to you live and direct from our Newsfest studios in Colombo. I'm Sonali Wanigapatake. We start off with a look at the stories making headlines tonight. Funerals of the two Buddhist monks who were killed at the Kotte Rajamahavihara held today.
දේශපාලනඥයන් ඇහිලි ගහන්නේ නැත්තම් පොලිසියට මේ අපරාධ හොයන්න පුළුවන් කමක් තියෙනවා.
Two killings reported from Kurunegala and Ridigama. Parliamentarian Karu Jayasuriya says the increase in the use of narcotics is the main reason for the wave of crime in the country. Pope Benedict XVI arrives in Mexico for a 3-day visit. Now on to the stories in detail. A leading weekend newspaper has reported that the government plans to shut down Sri Lankan embassies in a number of European countries. It notes that this is aimed at bringing about a radical change in the foreign policies of the government following the conclusion of the human rights session in Geneva. According to the weekend newspaper, embassies which did not aid in strengthening diplomatic ties will be closed down. However, it noted that embassies in France, UK, Germany and the EU will continue to function. According to the newspaper, high-ranking officials have informed that a number of embassies present in smaller European countries will be closed down and will be replaced with a single embassy which will oversee these nations. The newspaper report also noted that the Sri Lankan government is aiming to strengthen ties with South Africa, Latin American nations as well as other Asian nations. It also notes that Sri Lankan embassies will be established in Uganda and Congo as soon as possible. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Navi Pillay says that there should be no reprisal against human rights defenders following the adoption of the US-sponsored resolution on Sri Lanka by the UNHCR. Meanwhile, speaking on the final day of the 19th session of the UN Human Rights Session in Geneva, Switzerland, Sri Lankan Permanent Representative to the UN in Geneva, Thamara Kunanaikam, stated that Sri Lanka treats such allegations with utmost seriousness and do not condone such violations.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights today warned that there must be no reprisals against Sri Lankan rights defenders following yesterday's adoption of a resolution on Sri Lanka by Human Rights Council. Navi Pillay said that during this session of the Council there has been an unprecedented and totally unacceptable level of threats, harassment and intimidation directed at Sri Lankan activists who had traveled to Geneva to take part in the debate.
Meanwhile, issuing a joint statement, Sunla Abesekara, Nimalka Fernando and Dr. Pakisoti Saravanamuttu note that they have worked with a range of human rights organizations to draw attention to human rights violations in Sri Lanka and that it is their right to do so. They note that the government and its media have launched an unprecedented and utterly personalized attack against the three of them, adding that this is totally counterproductive in terms of the government's campaign to resist the resolution on Sri Lanka. They also note that they stand committed to their ideas and goals and will continue their work to defend human rights in Sri Lanka.
Before proceeding, Sri Lanka seeks clarification on allegations made by certain countries of threats to and intimidation of human rights defenders by members of its delegation. We treat such allegations with utmost seriousness and do not condone such violations. In this regard, we have asked for details from some of those making the claims, but so far we have not been able to ascertain the veracity of the incidents. We urge everyone to be responsible in making allegations that cannot be substantiated.
වෙන්ඩ විශේෂ පුවතක්. ශ්‍රී ලංකාව සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජිනීවාහිදී ගෙනුණු ලැබූ යෝජනාවලිය සම්බර කිරීම සඳහා ඉන්දියාව සියලු උත්සාහයන් දරූ බව ඉන්දියා අග්‍රාමාත්‍ය ආචාර්ය මන්මෝහන් සිං මහතා පවසනවා. CNN IBN වෙබ් අඩවිය වාර්තා කළේ ජනාධිපති මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මහතාට ලිපියක් යොමු කරමින් ඉන්දියා අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා මේ බව පවසා ඇති බවයි. ජිනීවාහිදී ඇමරිකාව ගෙනුණු ලැබූ යෝජනාවලියට පක්ෂව ඡන්දය භාවිත කිරීම පිළිබඳව පැහැදිලි කරමින් ඉන්දියා අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා එම ලිපිය යොමු කර තිබෙනවා. ශ්‍රී ලංකා නියෝජිත පිරිස සමග තවදුරටත් ඉතා සමීපව කටයුතු කරන ලෙස තමන් ජිනීවාහි සිය නියෝජිත පිරිසට උපදෙස් දුන් බව ඉන්දියා අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා ප්‍රකාශ කර ඇති බව CNN IBN වාර්තාවේ සඳහන්. ඉන්දියා අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා පවසන්නේ අර්ථවත් බලය බෙදීමේ ක්‍රමවේදයක් තුළින් කල්පවත්නා දේශපාලන විසඳුමක් ඇති කරගත හැකි බව ඉන්දියාවේ අදහස බවයි. பிரியா, ඔබට අවස්ථාව දෙමළ වශයෙන් විස්තර දෙන්නට.
நன்றி புத்தி. விசேட செய்தி ஒன்று. ஜெனீவா மனித உரிமைகள் பேரவையில் இலங்கை தொடர்பில் அமெரிக்காவினால் சமர்ப்பிக்கப்பட்ட பிரேரணிக்கு ஆதரவாக வாக்களித்தமை குறித்து விளக்கம் அளிக்கும் வகையில் இந்திய பிரதமர் கலாநிதி மன்மோகன் சிங் நேசக்கரம் நீட்டியுள்ளதாக CNN-IBN தகவல் வெளியிட்டுள்ளது. அர்த்தபூர்வமான நிலையான அரசியல் தீர்வை நோக்கிய திட்டத்திற்கு காத்திரமான பங்களிப்பை வழங்குவது இந்தியாவின் பொறுப்பாகும் என்றும் இந்திய பிரதமர் தெரிவித்துள்ளார். எவ்வாறாயினும் தீர்விற்கான சாத்தியமான வழிவகைகளை காண்பதற்காக இலங்கை பிரதிநிதிகளுடன் நெருக்கமான தொடர்பினை பேணுமாறு தமது ராஜதந்திரிகளுக்கு பிரதமர் மன்மோகன் சிங் ஆலோசனை வழங்கியிருந்ததாக CNN-IBN செய்தியில் குறிப்பிடப்பட்டுள்ளது. ஜெனீவாவில் இலங்கை தொடர்பில் அமெரிக்காவினால் முன்வைக்கப்பட்ட பிரேரணைக்கு ஆதரவாக இந்தியா வாக்களித்திருந்ததை குறிப்பிடத்தக்கது என்றும் அந்த செய்தியில் குறிப்பிடப்பட்டுள்ளது. ரமேஷ்.
Thank you, Priya. We interrupt this primetime news bulletin to bring you a special breaking news report. CNN-IBN reports that Indian Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh today offered Sri Lankan an olive branch explaining India's vote in favor of the US-sponsored resolution on Sri Lanka at the 19th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva. The Prime Minister had said that it is India's conviction that a meaningful devolution package would lead towards a lasting political solution. CNN-IBN reports that in his letter, the Indian Prime Minister had said, quote, I had instructed the Indian delegation to remain in close contact with its Sri Lankan counterparts in an attempt to find a positive way forward. Your Excellency should be aware that we spared no effort and were successful in introducing an element of balance in the language of the resolution, unquote. According to CNN-IBN, though India voted in favor of the resolution, it worked behind the scenes to tweak the document to make it non-intrusive. CNN-IBN states that in the letter which suggests that President Mahinda Rajapaksa had written to him 3 days before the vote, Singh noted that both countries had discussed the way ahead to a political solution that will address all outstanding issues, in particular the grievances of the Tamil community in Sri Lanka, in a spirit of understanding and mutual accommodation.
Thank you, Ramesh, for that. In related news, views were also expressed on the US resolution on Sri Lanka on the final day of the 19th UN Human Rights Session.
We categorically reject the resolution sponsored by the United States against Sri Lanka, which we deem to be a clear meddling in the internal affairs of a sovereign country. Sri Lanka has shown its spirit of compromise by openly informing the Council of the progress on this text, and we are very pleased to see the publication of the report of the Reconciliation Committee by the government. And we reiterate our condemnation and denounce the grave risk that we have with this resolution, which is politically motivated.
The US resolution against Sri Lanka constitutes a negative precedent that challenges the core values of the Human Rights Council and reflects a blatant case of politicization that takes the Council hostage to the hidden agendas of the mighty. No one here is ignorant of the pressures exercised and the methods used to obtain support for a resolution whose list of co-sponsors constitutes a caricature of a divided world. We reject all forms of unilateralism, threats, sanctions, blockades, conditionalities, and the orchestrated disinformation campaign whose aim is to diabolize Sri Lanka, but which only brings dishonor to its authors. Today, one country deems itself the depository of a mission to dictate to the rest of the world its vision of democracy, of human rights, of development. Is any of us safe from becoming the next target? Sri Lanka will continue its policy of peace and reconciliation, which is an inclusive process that enjoys not only the support of its own people, but broad international support. We will also continue to defend the independence and the prerogatives of the Human Rights Council against any effort to undermine its multilateral principles. We must heal, not hurt, unite, not divide. The victory of one nation over domination is our collective victory. Its defeat is our collective defeat.
Now, several politicians expressed their views today regarding the US-sponsored resolution on Sri Lanka that was adopted at the 19th session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, Switzerland.
පඩුමිල ඉහළ යාම සම්බන්ධයෙන් කතා කරගන්න බැරුව අර එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සංවිධානයේ හරහා
Since they cannot speak about the increasing prices of goods, they are now speaking about the resolution on Sri Lanka tabled at the United Nations in order to scare the country for no reason. I am honestly disappointed that the resolution was adopted at the United Nations. I am genuinely disappointed. Sri Lanka was known as the most precious country in the world and a paradise island where tourists were eager to visit. The world appreciated the people in this country.
ඒ ආකර්ෂණය තමයි මුළු ලෝකෙම ඇගීමට ලක් කරේ.
එම යෝජනාවලිය අපිට එරෙහි යෝජනාවලිය ඇමරිකාව ඉදිරිපත් කරන මොහොතේ
From the moment the United States tabled a resolution on Sri Lanka, I always believed that if the 47 countries that were eligible to vote in the United Nations were given an opportunity to cast a secret ballot, more than 35 votes would have been in favor of our country. We know that votes would have been cast against this resolution.
35කට වැඩිය අපේ රටට නැත්තම් මෙම යෝජනාවලියට විරුද්ධවයි ප්‍රකාශ වෙන්නේ කියන එක අපි හොඳටම දන්නවා.
තමන්ගේ රටේ ජනතාවට ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී අධිකස්කම් දෙන්නේ නැති ඇමරිකාව.
We don't believe that America, which does not grant democratic rights to its people, or India, which does not ensure the rights of its people, would have any necessity to protect the rights of any ethnic group in this country, be it Sinhala, Tamil or Muslim. Massive number of human killings took place in our country from 1987 to 1990. We did not see any of these countries making human rights interventions. Thereafter, over the last 22 years, human rights violations took place in this country and democracy was violated, but we did not see any of these countries intervening in these instances.
විදේශිකයන් අපි වගේ රටවල් වලට කවදාවත් ලේසියෙන් ඔළුව උස්සන්න දුන්නේ නැහැ හඳුරන්නේ. ඒක තමයි සත්‍ය.
Foreigners never allowed countries such as our country to raise its head very easily. That is the truth. For instance, roads were constructed across tanks in the northwest of the country during the colonial era. Many roads were constructed across the tanks. By destroying our waterways and irrigation systems in such a manner, they were scheming to make our nation an indebted nation. However, we have embarked on a path where the villagers in our country are able to reverse this situation.
හැදුවට ඒ ආපසු හැරවිය හැකි ජාතියක් බවට ගොඩනගන්නට අපේ රටේ ගම්බද ජනතාවට අද පුළුවන් මාවතට අපි පිවිසිලා තිබෙනවා.